What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of BookTube. I'm your host, Mr. Ahamad. Thank you so much for returning to my classroom. It's always a pleasure to have you here listening to me talk about books. Today I want to tell you about a story that took me a while to complete. It was over 500 pages long. By far the longest book that I have ever read, and I'm so proud of that. You wouldn't think that's something that an English teacher would brag about because we're supposed to read all the time. But let me tell you, as someone who was not a reader for such a long time, who had to get re-engaged with reading, this was a milestone for me. So this book, not just the story, but the fact that I completed it is very important to me, and it holds a personal spot on like my top 5, top 10 list. The book that I'm here to talk to you about is Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. This book, man, so good. If you're a fan of anything like Avatar: The Last Airbender, Dragon Prince, maybe even Lord of the Rings, then this book is for you. The way that it has been described to me before I started reading it and what I saw in interviews was that it was like Black Panther meets Avatar: The Last Airbender. So you get all this African and Black culture coming, and on a collision course with this fantasy realm of magic and martial arts, and man, it's a beautiful thing. I mean, firstly, the book opens with an action sequence, and there's like a chase scene, and there's all this combat happening, and to be able to read something and like read action and to understand what's happening word for word, blow for blow, and you can follow the whole fight, that is some terrific writing. That is some strong writing. That's some great art right there, and you don't get that much. So this book does that, and it gives you a great fantasy story. There's this big adventure taking place with this character named Zile. She is of the lineage of Magi, who are these people who once knew magic. They had this great thing happening where they can control different elements, even sickness, bringing people back from the dead, all this really cool stuff. That's where the whole Avatar Bender thing comes in, right? But King Soren, who was the ruler of a particular land, was very jealous of them, and he suffered at the hands of a group of them at one point in time, and he sought revenge. So he did this thing where he committed this mass genocide that severed the connection that the Magi had to magic. So you can see, if you know anything about fantasy, is that there are regular people without the ability to do magic, and then there are these people with a connection to the land and the world with varying abilities, and they're all marked by their white hair, and that becomes a slur. They call them maggots and stuff. So it's a lot of world building happening, and it's not that difficult to follow because it's so well ingrained in all of the characters and all of the action, and even in the way that the world is set up. So when you open the book, this is what you're greeted with. You get like a whole map. Check that out. You get a whole map of the things that's happening. And it's such a great story, man. It's so good. Children of Blood and Bone is such a good story because the characters are all so good. All of them are dealing with these different challenges. They all have these struggles, these false truths and these insecurities that they go on this journey to figure out. Children of Blood and Bone is such a good book because it's so character driven. Every single character that's involved, and you have 3 main characters. It shifts perspectives every couple of chapters, which really threw me off, but was really cool by the time I got to the end. You have Zile, who is a young girl who is born of the Magi, but she has lost her connection. She's essentially the chosen one. She's like the Avatar, but she's a little reluctant, and she's holding on to all this anger, and she has to learn how to trust. And there's a lot of cool things that happens with this character, but over time, seeing her become a strong and independent woman and someone who could stand on their own 2 feet, protect those that she cared about, and go up against something that was set out to destroy her, it was just amazing to watch. The other character that you read as is Amari. Amari is the daughter of King Soren. King Soren rules the land with an iron fist. He's very violent. He's all about his kingdom. He claims that it's for the people. He does it for the people, but dude is just moving fair. You can tell, right? There's definitely some metaphors happening here for what kind of person he represents, right? But Amari is very soft, she's very loving, she's very caring, and she doesn't make the decision to do something different right off the bat. She just feels that she has to do the right thing when she's caught up in a situation that she wasn't intended to be in. The third character that you read as is Inan, who is Amari's sister. And I mean, if you've seen Avatar: The Last Airbender, he's essentially Prince Zuko. He's going out to do the thing that his dad needs, and he's conflicted about it, and he's teetering, but he ends up making some terrible choices. Now, what we learn from Avatar: The Last Airbender, and what we also learn from this book, is that you can make bad choices and not be a bad person. But I don't know, there's a cliffhanger happening here. This book is supposed to be like a trilogy or something. We need to wait to find out who Anan is going to be moving forward within the next book or two. It's so like, I want that book now. I want the information now. And there are other characters too that we hang out with. Zile has a brother, an older brother, Tizan, who is not a Magi, and he's like the soccer of the group, but he's way more serious. He has no like special abilities, but dude can scrap. He can plan, and he's protective. He's just an all-around great character, and it's so great to see such positive black characters portrayed in a story, in a fantasy story no less. So, sidetrack. Let me explain my beef with Lord of the Rings. Everyone's like, oh, Jamal, you should like Lord of the Rings. Mr. Hyman, why don't you read Lord of the Rings? Here's my deal. I don't have a problem with Lord of the Rings. But when you have this big fantasy world with dwarves and elves and wizards and even dragons, you telling me not one of those people could be black? Not one of those people could be Asian or Hispanic or something? You got this whole world and it's what? Just only white people are there? Just only white elves, white dwarves, even if they had made them like navy blue or something. But like, I don't know, that just gets to me. I heard Adeyemi say something in a Jimmy Fallon interview.
I joke about having to become a doctor, but I think another part of it was I never saw authors who looked like me. I didn't see characters who looked like me. And so I spent like a decade in my room alone writing stories, but there were no black characters because I didn't think black people could be in books. So what really excites me about this and all the other awesome stories that are coming out right now is it's like we're all kind of fighting for the little versions of ourselves. Yeah. So it could be like, hey, little nerd Tomi, like write that dragon, but you can write it. Like, you don't have to take yourself out of the adventure. So I'm excited that this is doing that for other writers, but just for all types of people who aren't used to seeing themselves.
It's crazy because I never thought I liked fantasy, but when I was introduced to Avatar: The Last Airbender and I saw all these different people of colors, like Asian, Japanese, like Inuit, Native American, like that's what they look like, I was like, whoa, I could totally be included in this. This could be for me. And then this book does that too. So, I mean, I can't see the characters, but when you read about them, when you know it's based in Africa, when you know it's based on that folklore, when you see where it's coming from, the accents, like the language, it's more inclusive. So Adeyemi went out and she did a thing for the little girl that she was, right? She went out and wrote this book for the girl that sat in the room and was like, this isn't for me, but I love it, I wish it was. She did that. So this is so awesome because now I get to participate in that. And other kids who may be interested in that thing too, they can now see themselves and they can know that they participate. And also, what's pretty dope is that it has a little sprinkle of that culture in the book. So you feel even more so like you could be a part of it. Oh, it's so fun. It's so fun. If I haven't said it already, another thing that I'm really into in this book is the combat. So aside from how it's written and how it shifts and stuff, there's all this magic happening, but there's also a lot of martial arts. I don't know if Adeyemi is a practitioner of martial arts, but the way she writes Zile and how she uses her bow staff, or the way how she writes Anan using his sword, or Amari using her dagger, it's so good. Like, I can follow the whole fight and visualize it right in my head, like step for step, blow for blow, and I can. It shows up in my head like a cartoon or like well choreographed fight scene in a Hollywood blockbuster. Like, that's how good her writing is. But with everything that Adeyemi does in her book, I think the most impressive thing is that it is an allegory or a metaphor for what we're experiencing today in our world. It's not super duper clear until you get to the acknowledgments and you read that final section. But as you're reading it, you get a hunch. You're like, man, like, you know, you got humans, the people who don't have abilities, and they're trying to prevent these people, like it's their birthright to have these abilities. They're trying to prevent them from having it. They're keeping them there. They're putting them under. They're calling them names and stuff. Sounds a lot like racism. You know, but when all the characters are black, could it be racism? You know? But that's the issue. When you go into fantasy and when you step away from real life, you can highlight that stuff even more because you get these different characteristics that fall into things that are actually happening in real life. So, you know, to have the excessive force and, you know, the policing and the refusal to get to know people or to try to communicate and converse about the issues, which is what happens in the book. You get these characters who come together and they make these assumptions, and it's like, well, you did this and you did that, and no one's willing to forgive, no one's willing to move forward. That sounds a lot like what we're experiencing right now today. If people can just quiet down and talk, but not only talk, but listen with an open mind and an open heart, then maybe we can reach something new, some kind of conclusion. And that's exactly what happened between some of the characters. Some of them, I don't want to spoil it for you. Some of the characters, they come along and they start working together, they get on good terms. Other characters, it's like, you know, they just been thinking one way for so long that it's almost impossible to turn them away from that. And then you have to try to hold this conversation and do this communication and make this change through someone else. So Adeyemi was like, you know, New York Times bestseller, well worth it. It makes sense. So, you know, I've been raving about this book this whole time. It's not like I'm not gonna tell you to read it. You gotta read it. Children of Blood and Bone is definitely a story worth sharing. If you are into fantasy, if you are into martial arts, if you like African culture, if you like things like Black Panther, Avatar: The Last Airbender, Dragon Prince, Lord of the Rings, any of those things, you're gonna love this book. And you should definitely get on it before the sequel or the trequel. What do you call the third story? I don't know. Get on it before the other books come out so that you can be on top of it. And fun fact, it's gonna be a movie. So read it now.